Vinayak Garg is an alumnus of IIT Delhi and founder of Lazy Gardener, a startup initiated with the aim of providing innovative and easy gardening solutions to urban gardeners. Mr. Vinayak Garg built Lazy Gardener with a focus on creating an engaged community of urban and home gardeners through online and offline events. Within a year, Lazy Gardener has amassed an active, growing community of gardeners, 186,000 plus followers on Instagram and 80,000 plus followers on Facebook. The community engages for plant related tips, suggestions, and also helps the community to grow healthier and more plants. I am sure this would be an extremely interesting session for people like me and my family who try to grow plants at home and for those who seek to be first time plant parents. I encourage our viewers to ask any query they have in the chat box below, and we would definitely address that towards the end. I won't waste any more time. Over to you, Vinayak.
Thank you, Priyanjali, for a wonderful introduction. And there's a very interesting point you touched, which I'd like to start with in terms of why I also feel gardening really fits into the overall theme. So we talk about meditation, and when we talk about meditation, as I understand, there are two different ways to do it, and passive and an active meditation, right? So a, gardening is an activity that can provide you a space which you can really indulge into the activity, forgetting everything else and just thinking about the task at hand. And having this kind of space in your everyday schedule is a great therapeutic exercise. And that's why we see a lot of stories shared with us from people pre-corona time and also during the lockdown, with so many more people taking up this activity. So it's a great thing. If you are not a plant parent, start by getting a plant home, start gardening, get your kids to start gardening. And I feel that is one of the easiest and the simplest first step towards making a change towards for a better environment and also for your better self. So with that in mind, let's start with something practical and something simple. And I would like to begin by saying one of the greatest joy that you can have in gardening is related to growing something from seed. And we have seeds at home. We have seeds in our kitchen. We have seeds as spices easily available for us. And that's where we're going to start with. So this is what I like to show. So this is a very simple thing to grow. This is seeds of methi or fenugreek. And this is fenugreek, and it's very easy to grow. Now, how you can grow this is that you take some fenugreek seeds, and all you have to do is just sprinkle them on top of the soil. Now, let me just show you. Say, so what I have here is coriander seeds, but similarly, you have fenugreek seeds. I'll show you some other seeds as well. And you take the seeds and you can just put it on any soil surface. And this is, I would say, this is a highly recommended exercise for anyone who is just a beginner or anyone who is watching this, because this is the easiest thing. You take a pot, you put some seeds on the top. Ideally, I'm saying fenugreek or methi seeds because they're going to germinate within a day. And that's a great exercise to see a webinar today and tomorrow have your methi seeds sprout up. What better than that? So just take a pot, put some methi seeds and water it. If you have kids, engage them in this. And with that, you would get your seeds up this high within 1 week. Now, there are two ways to go about it. You can just cut this and eat it. And that's why we have very less left, because we cut it continuously. So you can cut it and use it as microgreens in your food. They're very nutritious. Just like we have sprouts from, say, different dals. Same way from methi, you can grow something highly nutritious, and it comes under the category of microgreens. Now, the other way to do it is just let it grow and you will get the kind of methi, the herb methi that we buy from market, the fresh methi. This is what I want to start off with. If there is one thing that you can take away from this session, is to just put some seeds and start growing. Now, where are you going to keep this after putting the seed? Keep it away from direct sun. Keep it away from direct sun. Keep it somewhere where it can get light, but not heat. We do not want the water to evaporate too fast, and we want it to be continuously moist. Now, there is one important thing. Whenever you're growing something from seed, how you water is very important. And I see Mangla has asked a question, how much to water? So first of all is how to water. And the ideal thing is if you have a spray bottle, just spray some water on it and spray generously, let the water seep in. Now the idea is a heavy stream of water can actually damage the seeds because they're very young. They don't have roots going down deep. If you put water from force, it can disturb the seeds. So just try to be gentle. If you do not have a spray bottle, very simply take the water bottle, put your fingers and guide the water through your hand onto the soil. That is the trick, right? So we spread the seeds on soil, we keep it away from direct sun, we water it and keep it moist, and you have something growing right from day one. If you have kids, they're going to love it. Encourage your kids to just see the growth, and they also understand, say, the power of food, the thing that we are eating that has a potential to create so much growth. So that's a great, in general, a first step into gardening for anyone. So let's start with that. And after that, let me just complete this by saying you can also grow sarson that you find at home. So this is the sarson seed. And okay, we call it rai also. This is sarson seeds otherwise. And this you can grow very easily the same way. The only difference is it is going to take much longer than the methi seeds to germinate. It is going to take, I'm guessing, about 5 to 8 days to germinate. Maybe sometimes earlier, depending upon the climate. Then the third option is coriander. But one thing to remember with coriander seeds is if you're growing coriander, you have to split the seeds before soaking them in. So, before planting them. So you see, these are the coriander seeds. And we need to gently just break them into two parts so that we have the seeds separate into two different parts, right? So that's the idea. Another thing with coriander is coriander takes a long time to germinate. So if you break the seed and then soak it overnight before putting it in soil, that will be good. And currently it's hot everywhere across India. So not the best time to plant coriander, but I would say growing methi and cutting it and eating it as microgreens will work. Now let's move towards plants that you have at home. I will take you through, say, 5 points or 5 tips that can really help you have better and healthier and happier plants at home. And then we can just take an example of a plant that we all love, and that is money plant, on how to really multiply and grow and make your money plant bushier. We can talk about that. Now, first and foremost, when we talk about plants, I think the biggest issue that I see happening is where to put the plant is a topic that is generally misunderstood or ignored, and it is actually one of the most important topics to consider. Now, if you allow me, I like to just take you back towards, say, a class in school, and that is how plants are different from animals. So what is your guess? So what differentiates or distinguishes at a fundamental level plants from animals? Plants have an ability to make their own food and animals don't. And for plants to make their own food, they do it through process of photosynthesis that requires light, water, minerals and nutrition, and then with chlorophyll, all of this is converted to food, right? Now you have to understand, for plants to survive and for them to grow, all these three aspects are essential, as they are essential for photosynthesis. So light is extremely important for plants. If so, there's a myth in general that goes out, and a lot of people ask me, what are the plants I can keep in dark places? Which plant survives without light? Or there's this question that snake plant can do without light. There is no plant that can do without light. All plants need light. All plants love light. More the light, better the plant will do. There is never a doubt about it. It's just that some plants are able to make food even in low light intensities. So like say snake plant, or say a ZZ plant or money plant, they're able to make food even in low light because for their photosynthesis process, they can still continue that process with low light intensity. And why is that they're able to make food even with low light? That is because generally these plants their native habitat is such that they live in areas where there is low light. Right? So point number one is, it is very important where you are putting your plants. Based on their light requirement, we have to put plants at a place where they are going to get some light and light according to their needs. If you put a plant which has high lighting requirement into a very dull spot, indoor spot where it's not getting any light, it will be an issue, right? So very important, understand where you are keeping your plants. Then let's come to point two, and this is essentially talking about keeping plants inside the home, indoors. We have talked about light, and while we are keeping the plant at the right place, how is it that we can supplement the need of the plant, or how can we choose a better spot? So first of all is a very important point to note, artificial light or electric light also helps. So you have these bulbs and you have tubes or LEDs. The light from these are also possible for plant to be used for photosynthesis process. And that means that if a plant is kept indoors, if a plant is inside a home, and if it is kept near a light or far away from light, it is going to do better near a light. So always, whenever possible, try to put your plants near to an artificial light source, like that is a bulb or a tube light. It's always going to be better than being away from it. And I see many people put it next to a lamp or a table lamp. That looks amazing and it works very well for the plant also. So that's the second thing. Artificial light is going to help your plants. So if you're putting your plants in an indoor setting, if you're putting them in a setting where they're not getting natural sunlight, then you can still supplement that light by the use of normal lights and normal bulbs, which will help those plants tremendously. Now let's come to point three, and this point is also relating to light, but from a very different perspective. When we say plants require light, what is the light given to a plant is basically a sum of the intensity of light and for how long that is given, right? So let's say if we were to score lights and there is some light that is has a score of 20, and we are giving that plant a light of 20 for 10 hours versus we are giving a light of 100 for 2 hours. Essentially, we can say that is going to be similar for plant to make food. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean that we can use that for? Even if when we are keeping plants inside our homes in low light conditions, we should try to rotate them and take them outside on a weekly basis. Very important, very essential. So plants that you're keeping indoors, plants which are in your living room or bedroom, how about every Sunday, just take them out in the balcony where they can get some sun, some indirect sun, bright shade, just be in more brighter environment where they can get more light. You'll see your plants would really love that. The amount of the way your plants are would really improve, and you can also use that day for watering your plants. And we'll just come to watering, but I want to add one very important disclaimer here. What is the difference between, say, sunlight and a bright spot? When we say bright spot, essentially we mean a lot of light. But sunlight comes with light and heat. So yes, there are plants like, say, money plant. This one is a money plant. Now, say for money plant, direct sun is not a good idea because it will burn the leaves. That is because of the heat component in the sun rays, but it still loves light. So whenever you take it out for on a Sunday, try not to keep it too long in direct sun, but just try to keep it outside where it is getting all the natural daylight, it's getting that brighter space, but not direct sun. So just look that out for your own plant, but make sure that your plants that are kept inside your house get a chance to go out and see the outdoors every week. Now let's talk about watering. And when we are talking about watering, I like to just take you back to the point that we discussed. That is the photosynthesis. But before we go deeper in that, let me ask you a question. Why do plants kept inside your home require less water? So in general, this is the understanding that plants kept outside, plants outdoors, they require more water. Plants kept inside the home, they would require less water. But why is it that the plants kept inside your home would require less water? If you think of the photosynthesis process again, water is an essential component in photosynthesis, and so is the light. That means both of them are going to be used together. If we are going to give less light, that means less water will be used by the plant, because that's how it's going to work. A lot of the people miss this point and they feel that the requirement is lesser indoors because of the evaporation is lesser. That's not the case. The main reason we water the plant is not so that it can get evaporated, but the main reason we water the plants is so that the plant can absorb that water and then it can use that water for photosynthesis process, for making food, for staying alive, and for new growth. So this is very important. This is very important to understand because it sets the stage for a couple of things. Firstly, it tells you that even inside your home, the plants that are getting less amount of light intensity, they are going to require lesser water. Secondly, it tells us that, say, we have added too much water. What is the simplest way to fix that? The simplest way to fix that is to give plant more light. Put it in a place where it is getting more light, and then it will do more of photosynthesis and food making, and it will use up that water. And it's the same place where I would also like to really highlight the fact that more plants are killed because of overwatering. Overwatering is a thing we need to understand. I know me growing up doing gardening, it was always that if the plant has any issue, just put water. If you are feeling bored, just water. If it is evening time, just water. But I'll tell you one thing. When you water a lot, when you water more than what plant requires, the roots begin to rot. And that is one of the biggest reasons why plants die. For indoor plants, house plants die because people water too much. Then the roots are sitting in water, fungal infection sets in, the aeration in soil is not there, and it just sets in a cycle of rotting and disease for the plant. So when should you water? So what is one way to know whether I should water this plant or not? Let me just take this example. So I have a plant here and we have a pot. So the simplest way is take your finger and put it about an inch deep. And when you take it out, when you see that the soil is sticking to your hand, you should not water in this case. Don't water. If the soil sticks to your hand, do not water. It already has a lot of water in it. And then I have this money plant. Let me put my hand in it. And you'll see it's just dust. The soil doesn't stick. This is when you can water. Now, whether you should water or not, that's a very different question. But that's why the rule is if the soil sticks to your finger, do not water. And over time, you won't have to stick your finger in every pot. You'll just see the soil. You'll be able to understand whether I need to water this plant or not. Plants can survive less watering. Plants can survive with dry soil. They cannot do so with too much of wet soil. Give me that ZZ. I'll show you some plants which survived in our office when during lockdown, even when they didn't get water for almost 2 months. And this is a ZZ plant. It's called Z and Z, double Z. So this is a ZZ plant, and this plant is doing amazingly well. It didn't get water for 2 months. It's doing well. Same is the case with snake plant. I don't know how much you water your snake plant. I water it like once a month. Snake plant will die when you water it regularly. And that is actually true for most plants. If you're watering most plants every day, the roots are going to get rot. And another question that I get is, how can I plant something when I don't have a drainage hole in the pot? Do not. Drainage hole is absolutely essential. And this is the snake plant. Wonderful plant. If you're getting your first plant, I would recommend it to be, actually, I'll recommend it to be ZZ. And after that, my recommendation would be snake plant. So drainage, watering, extremely important topics for a person to understand, because once your plant starts to have root rot, it is extremely difficult to handle that situation and to correct that. It's always easier to err on the side of having lesser water for the plants, always. Okay. Now, let's, okay. So now let's talk about point number 5 for your plants. And this is where I'll just take you through on how to make your money plant bushy. Now, one of the very interesting thing is that we love our plants, and because of that, we are afraid to do one thing that is absolutely essential for their great growth. Believe it or not, your plant is going to become bigger and bushier only if you cut it back, if you trim it, right? So what is trimming? Trimming is essentially a process. You cut back your plants so that with a purpose to encourage new growth. That's the idea. When you cut any branch of a plant, the plant goes into a survival mode. it gets a signal saying that my survival, my life is at stake. There is a risk there. So I should do everything that is possible to really grow big from any place that is possible. And that is the secret to making your plant bushier. If you're not going to cut, and I have felt that I can see in my own journey, earlier I would not cut plants, and most of the plants that I would cut were only the ones where I would feel that the growth is not happening. And that's great. If the growth in the plant is not happening, we should cut it. But the plants I would not be cutting back is where there is growth, but it is not as good as what I want it to be. So just imagine that you have a money plant basket. I have it here. Wait, I'll pick it. Okay. So let's just imagine you have a money plant basket, and if there was one this stem of money plant coming out from here and going down. Now you feel that, okay, there is one long stem. How can I cut that very stem? And it is absolutely essential to cut it, because unless you cut it, the plant is not going to multiply. So let's try to understand, how do you make money plant basket bushy? But just remember, it's not only for money plant, it's applicable in general for a whole range of plants. I'll just take example of money plant because I believe money plant is most easily accessible to most people, and this is a plant that everyone has great expectations from. The moment somebody puts a cutting of money plant in water, they just feel that it will grow up to be so big. So let's just try to help get those expectations into reality. So first and foremost, what is essential is we should have a lot of cuttings inside the same pot. So I've just put this half side of cutting in my last Sunday's live, but essentially you can see, if you look at it, there are a lot of plants. There are a lot of different individual plants coming out of this basket itself. I estimate a pot would have 15 to 20 plants coming out of it for it to look bushy. Anything less than that, it is not going to look bushy. So the only way for a plant to become very bushy, money plant specifically, is by having multiple plants at the base. Now, how do you get multiple plants going? It's not essential that you start with a lot of plants. The first and foremost is a snippers or something. It can be a scissors. I normally use scissors. It's just that we have this fancy tool here. So we need to cut the plant, and we need to cut the plant from nodes. We need to find the node in the plant, and we need to cut it under money plant. When we make a cutting, we can put it back in the same pot. So we are doing two things. We are trimming, which is going to encourage growth. And at the same time, we are adding a plant in the pot, which is going to make it bushier. So two things. Now, how do you cut and how do you ensure growth? Now here, look at this thing. And this is one of the most important steps. Do you see this? This place from where the leaves are coming out, and there's this small node and a bump. This is known as a node. This is a node, right? So new roots are going to come out of this. Now, if you're growing money plant in water, I'll give you one very simple rule. If you're growing money plant in water, the simple rule is have 3 clear nodes. I have here 1, 2, 3. I should have 3 clear nodes. And when I put it inside water, I put 2 nodes inside the water. That is one of the thumb rules that I follow. It works. if you don't have a node inside water, it doesn't matter how great your water is, it doesn't matter how great your plant is, it will not grow roots. So always look for these nodes when you're trying to put any plant in water. Okay. The same thing when you're putting in soil. This is the node from where the roots are going to come out. So imagine now I have this. Now imagine, say if I have this plant coming out of a pot, then I should cut this back. While cutting back, what I normally look at is what is the distance between these two nodes. What is the distance between these two nodes? And I will cut back where the distance is minimum. So you will see here, if I show you, the distance was not much here. Then the distance kept increasing. Then it came down again. But what essentially it is signifying, the increase is distance, the increase in distance shows that the plant was searching for light. The plant was not getting light, so it was just growing to find light. And this is true. This plant had this growth from here to here during the time of lockdown. It was really looking for light because the lights were off in our office. So if I have to cut back, I will cut back here so that new growth can come out of these two. And then I'll have a new plant from here on. And then I will put it in water or in the soil, and I will have a great plant. If you really are afraid to cut your plant, then there's one more thing you can do. While I really say don't be afraid, just cut it. But say you see this branch, this branch of money plant is hanging out. Now I want to put it back into soil so it can multiply, right? Now, how do I do that? Because if I press it, I don't know. Okay, now you can see it. Now, if I press it, every time I press it, it comes back up. So here's where you can use this bobby pin, right? Which you use for hair. I mean, not me, but people. So you can take this bobby pin or hair pin or juda pin, whatever you call it, and you can just use this to press your plant in. Should I come closer? So just be careful while you're pushing it in. You don't need to hurt it. I mean, it's not a staple. It's not, we are not stapling the plant to the soil. We are just using it so that this stem doesn't move. Now it is firmly in place. As you can see, this stem, I've just put in a bobby pin here, and now it is firmly in place. And this way it will develop new roots. After it develops new root, just take off that pin, and it is already secured inside the soil, and it will do well. So that was my small, say, attempt to encourage you to have plants, have healthier plants, to start gardening, to involve your kids in gardening. Let me just recap very quick. First and foremost, just start gardening. Gardening is great. Gardening is great to bring a routine, discipline, and a hope into life at any stage, be it a kid or, as was pointed out, it is an activity across ages. If nothing else, just start by spreading the seeds of fenugreek on any soil, any pot, water it for a day or two, and you'll see some new growth happening. Let that be an encouragement for you or for your kid to know more about plants, to begin gardening. And if you have plants, if you're planning to get plants, let's talk about how you can keep plants really good, happy, and healthy at home. So first of all, just look for light, look for the right place to keep your plants. Every plant needs light. And there's nothing called an indoor plant. What we should call them is low light plants, because every plant would require light. And because every plant requires light, an attempt to give light to a plant through an artificial source like tube or bulb is also going to help. So if you keep plants in your home where the light is not there, if you can move the plant closer to an artificial source of light, it will be very helpful. Another thing you can do is you can rotate your plant from indoor inside the house to balconies at least once a week or once in 15 days. And that is going to be really good for your plants too. Talking about what's good for your plants, let's talk about water. And a lot of water is not good for your plants. The roots can rot because of overwatering, because of lack of aeration. A good drainage in the pot is essential. It's absolutely essential for having great house plants. Underwatering or watering your plants lesser is going to be still better than trying to overwater your plants. So whenever in doubt, do not water your plants. Otherwise, water your plants only when the soil is dry to touch. No other schedule. There should not be a weekly schedule. There should not be a daily schedule. No schedule. Water when the soil is dry to touch. Then we have talked about how you can really help your plants grow bigger and bushier by trimming. And we took the example of money plant, and the point is really need to be concerned about this node. This node means everything when it comes to propagating, to multiplying, or taking care of your plants like money plant and other plants that we find at home. The roots are going to come out from these nodes itself. So this was my broad session, and we can take questions.
Hi, Vinayak. This is Priyanjali here. I'll just read out a few questions. And in fact, we have a lot of questions that have come in. And starting with Tulsi. Tulsi is a very auspicious plant for most of us. And there have been a lot of questions regarding that. So starting with, there's a question from Shashikala where she asks, how much water and sunlight does a Tulsi plant need? And someone's also said that their Tulsi plant is turning yellow after about 3 months. So how much, no matter how much soil and manure they put into it. And also to add on to that, I have a question that our Tulsi plant has been infested with these white mealy bugs. So what is the cure for all of that? And how do you grow a healthy Tulsi plant?
Okay. So for Tulsi, a hot climate is always welcome. Direct sun can leave sometimes your Tulsi very dry, leggy, and things like that. Give your Tulsi sun in general, because your best bet to grow Tulsi to become really healthy and big and bushy, the sun is going to play a big role. In fact, the reason why, at least in northern India, most of the Tulsi plants really struggle is because of the cold winters from November to February. And sadly, what happens is once the leaves start shedding, people think I need to add more water. And then because of watering, the plant sheds more leaves. Now with Tulsi, another very interesting thing is because of the auspicious nature of the plant, watering it in a ritual manner is also a big part of our tradition. And that can cause overwatering of the plant at times. So one of the simplest way to overcome that is to have multiple plants, to have multiple pots of Tulsi, or have a really very well drained soil. Another very important aspect to understand here is there are different types of Tulsi. There's a Tulsi with black leaves, the Shama Tulsi. And then there's a Rama Tulsi. Now, why it is important to understand is Shama Tulsi will have small black leaves. And if you compare it with, say, Rama Tulsi, which has big green leaves, you might feel you're doing something wrong, but it's just a very different variety of Tulsi altogether. Now, let's talk about the Tulsi leaves turning yellow. Yellow Yellowing of leaves is a big topic. It's a huge topic, but there are essentially 5-6 reasons why leaves can be turning yellow. It can be temperature, it can be heat, sunburn, things like that. It can be lack of nutrition, specifically manganese, magnesium, which is not allowing the chlorophyll to be made. It could be lack of light, sunlight. It can be overwatering. It can be underwatering. So I at times feel very stupid saying that I don't know it can be overwatering or underwatering because of which your leaves are turning yellow. But essentially, it's like saying that when we have fever, fever is just indicative of something is wrong with the body. You cannot detect the disease by the fact that you have fever. The yellowing of leaves is almost similar for plant. It is just showing stress. It is the first place where the plants get affected, but the pattern of yellowing and other things can help us understand what it is. For mealy bugs infestation, one of the simplest ways you can fight it is, firstly, you have to do a manual cleaning. Remove any parts of the plant which are really badly affected by mealybugs. Try to spray away through water. After that, what you can do is, say, take a soap water, mild soap solution, spray it in the evening and then wash it away in the morning. But just remember, you'll have to repeat it a couple of times at a gap of every 2 days or so for about a week, 10 days. Because there's a cycle of the egg and the larvae and the insect. And we have to, with this approach, we are just attacking the insect. So we have to complete the life cycle for it to be eradicated.
So moving on to the next question, there's a question from Mahesh Kiran Rao. He asks, what is the best time for watering plants? Is it morning or night, or does time not matter at all?
Technically, time should not matter. But why it matters is, so let me just say this way, whatever time you can water your plant, that's the best time, I believe. At the same time, if you water in the morning, then there are two very important things that help a plant. Let's say you water too much. Let's say you watered your plant too much. Now, if you water it in the evening, till the morning, the unused water is going to stay in the soil. And if it is really too much for the soil to absorb, then the roots are sitting in water. But when you water in the morning, what happens is the plant can begin and start using the water instantly for their process of photosynthesis. The second thing is, yes, during the day, there's also evaporation of water from, there's also, yes, evaporation of water. And the third thing is, when we water the plant, there are plants in which the water can get trapped. So let's look at this snake plant. Now the water can get trapped here inside. Now, when this happens repeatedly, another kind of rot sets in. Basically, we call it a crown rot. But essentially what is happening is the leaves have water trapped inside at the joint with the stem. And from there, it can cause fungal infection, bacterial infection. So if you water during the morning or before the sun is there, all these issues can be very easily avoided. Now, these issues can also be avoided if you water the right amount and you water the soil, not sprinkle over the plant. But if you're watering in the evening, so let's put it this way, if you're watering in the evening, water lesser than what you think you should and water the soil, not the plant. Don't spray the plant.
That was very helpful. The next question that I'd like to ask is, it's from Shashi Kala Rao. And also I would like to add to it, there are so many varieties of pots that are available in the market. We have plastic, we have ceramic pots. So which is the ideal pot that would help a plant to grow healthy? And does the composition of the pot, like, whether it's plastic or ceramic, matter? And what about the size? Does that also make a big difference?
Okay. So this is a very interesting question. So let me just pull up one kind of a plastic pot. So there are different kind of plastic pots also. Let me just start with that so that we are on the same page, that when I'm going to talk about plastic pot, I'm going to talk about this one. This is known as nursery pot. And it has a lot of holes at the bottom. If you see, it doesn't have a hole at the center, but it has holes all around. Okay. So when I say talk about plastic pot, I'm going to talk about this one. So pots essentially serve three purpose or three roles. One is decorative. Let me take it off. That's your choice in terms of what really looks decorative to you. After that, there are two roles of the pots. One is drainage, how well the water drains out, right? The second is the aeration of soil, roots. How easily can the air pass through the roots or the soil? So terracotta pots are amazing for the breathing aspect, and there is an aeration that comes in for roots there. And then you have these, but the drainage is not that good. You have one hole, and when you have one hole, there's a chance that it will get blocked by the soil itself. Then on the other end, we have these plastic pots. There's no aeration, but the drainage is extremely good because of these multiple holes. Then there's ceramic. There's neither aeration, there's neither drainage advantage. So for me, I feel there's always a trade-off then. It doesn't matter which pot you're picking up, there's always a trade-off. And depending upon which pot you pick up, you have to understand your own activity or the thing that you need to be more careful about. So say if you have a terracotta pot, then all you need to make sure is that the drainage is happening well, the water is going out of the pot. And yes, do the tilling or the loosening of soil. But the tilling and loosening of the soil will become more important in a plastic and a ceramic pot, because that's the only way the roots are going to get any air to breathe. So that's the thing. I personally love using these plastic pots, essentially because then the watering issue is not there. And these plastic pots actually last much longer. They last for like 10-15 years in general. I keep reusing them. Even if the plant dies, the pot remains. One other thing here is in terms of the size of the pot that you asked. So the size of the pot is very important, because if you have a small plant in a big pot, then again, one thing that is happening is that the roots are very small to absorb all the water available. And as we discussed a lot about the root rot, the second thing that happens is the plant will continue to grow roots, but nothing on top, or not as much on top, if you give plant too big a pot from the starting. So the best idea is just to move plant one size higher. How do we measure the size of a pot? We measure the size of a pot by its diameter. So this one is a 4-inch pot, because this is going to be 4-inch, or it might be 3/4. And this one is a 6-inch pot. This would be 6-inch, and things like that. So if I have to move up this plant into a bigger one, like if I have to move this one into a bigger one, I'll move it to this one. That's one size higher, and that's how you should go. So 4-inch to 6-inch, 6 to 8, 8 to 10. That's how you go from size 1 to size 2. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Aarti Dareshwar. She says that her indoor flowering pots they aren't growing flowers. So can you please suggest a remedy?
Which plant is it? Does it say the plant?
There's no specification.
Okay. So I'll tell you, all flowering plants need light. So except for two plants, peace lily and anthurium, except for these two, there is no flowering plant which you can keep without sun or without light. They love light, and that's the only way they're going to flower. Even for peace lily and for anthurium, the brighter the light, they're going to flower better, right? So that is one of the reasons why I personally also don't like peace lily or anthurium, because people buy them for flowering, but they don't inside the home is not ideal situation for any flowering plant. And also say now that also allows you to understand, if you see a flowering plant or a plant which is going to give fruits after flowering, it is going to require sun, so you know you're going to keep it outdoors. The other aspect of flowering is it needs to have good amount of nutrition. Phosphorus, potassium are essential part for flowering. Nitrogen is essential for leaves. So many times what happens is we keep feeding the plant nitrogen, so it will keep being healthy and grow leaves, but it will not bloom. So that's the other thing.
So there's another question from Mahesh Kiran Rao. He's asking, why does no one grow cactus at home? And they have kept a tree converted as bonsai. So is there any reason why cactus is not grown at home?
I don't know. I think it might be something to do with Vastu or something.
Okay.
Uh, I don't like cactus because I hurt my fingers. So we keep cactus, but we keep it away from our tables. But aside from that, there's no other issue.
Okay. Shailini Rao asks, how do you select the soil for plants?
Okay, so very good question. So soil essentially also it has a couple of roles, and one is drainage, the other is nutrition, and these are the essential two aspects that a soil should have. Uh, I would say there's not a lot in selection of soil, especially when you are doing it for home gardening. What matters is there are some plants in extreme which require very little water. We should focus on them being very well drained. Now what does it mean to be very well drained? It means that when you water, it holds very little water, and if you put any more water, it will just let it flow down. So you can mix river sand, you can put some coarse material and things like that. On the other extreme is clay. Clay just sticks to each other and it doesn't let water to pass. So that is going to be the other extreme of well drained. In my opinion, your plants do come in clay soil from nursery, but most plants will not do well in clay soil. Generally a soil from park or of a normal consistency, that works well as an all purpose general plant soil, where it's neither like a sand, it's neither like clay, it's in between. More important than potting soil, what becomes important is how do you pot your plant. And for that, I think one thing you should do is always make sure you have some pebbles at the bottom of your pot near the drainage hole. That will prevent the drainage hole itself from becoming blocked, and your soil will naturally be more well drained in that manner.
I have a few more questions.
Yeah,
One of
please
them
go ahead.
is, how do you grow basil? Because even we tried that, in fact, and we got basil leaves from the market and we tried potting that, and that just did not grow. So, is there any weather condition or what is the problem
So
in
when we
growing
say
basil?
basil, we are meaning the holy basil.
Yeah, the Italian leaf, the spice.
Tulsi.
No. The
Okay,
ones you use for Italian
got it,
cooking.
got it, got it. So essentially, tulsi is also basil, and these are just different basils. So the Italian one is called sweet basil, and you can get seeds for this. They're very easily you can find seeds in any of the plant shop for sweet basil. And if you see on tulsi, you have this flower that comes. Have you seen that? Then it has some crispy seeds on all around. The same way this basil will also have. So if you have one, or if your friend has one, just let it flower. You can collect those seeds and put it yourself, or just buy those seeds. And after that, having seeds. So best way to grow anything from seed is just couple of things to note. Firstly, whatever is the size of the seed, you have to bury it in the soil almost the same depth. That is very important. So like if you have a mango seed, it's a very thick, big seed. You have to put it much deeper. But if you have something like a basil seed, it's almost like a paper. You have to just put it a paper thickness below the soil. Very important. Secondly, during the initial phase, just keep the soil moist. Even if you think nothing is going to come out, just keep the soil moist. The the seeds sometimes take months to germinate. Sometimes what also happens is we put the seed in a wrong climate. So say maybe the seed requires temperature of 20 degrees Celsius and we have put it in 30-degree. Then it'll, by the time the temperature drops down, it'll begin to germinate. So never lose hope on your seeds. I think that is one of the very important thing. The third thing is whenever you're planting seed, keep it away from sun so that the soil can remain moist. And seeds need two things. Seeds need moisture and seed need darkness. So darkness we give by covering it with soil and moisture we give by watering it. They need these two conditions to germinate. So yeah.
Okay. There's a question from Sahana Rao. She's asking, what are the home remedies for tackling insects in plants?
Soap solution is actually by far a good way for mealybugs and aphids after the infestation is there. But whenever we use soap solution, we have to make sure that we are also washing the plant with water the next day morning. So always have soap solution in the evening and the next day morning, wash it off with water. A gentle diluted neem oil spray would be a very good way as a preventive solution. And I would say never use neem oil after the insects set in, because you're going to aggravate the problem, because then you are going to make the insect resistant to neem oil. But neem oil is really good for as a preventive method. Another thing is there are many plants which can naturally uh, say repel off insects from other plants. So like say for marigold, if you have lines of marigold in between your other plants, then many insects, they don't like the strong smell of pungent smell of uh, marigold. I'm not sure. I think that is also true for garlic, though I'm not sure. But yeah, so there are these plants you can find. The marigold for definitely is one such plant.
Also, another question, just to add on to whatever you
Yeah.
said right now, is how do you dilute neem oil and how do you use it? Like, do you sprinkle it over the stems, leaves?
So exact dilution ratio you can see in the pack that you get, because all of them come with different strength and they require different dilution. You spray it. Use a spray bottle mister, and you have to spray it uh, over the stem. Yeah. Oh, not over the stem. I mean all up over the plant.
Okay.
So one more thing, when you are spraying, don't forget the underside of the leaf, because all these insects, they hatch the egg on the underside of the seed. So yeah.
Also, there's another question. How do you maintain water succulent plants?
Water succulents. I'm not. I don't really like succulent. I don't know. I don't even have experience on succulent. But I'll tell you one thing. With the succulents, keep them outdoors. Whatever people might say, they are not to be kept inside home. From a light perspective, I'm not talking about any other reason, but succulents enjoy heat, not direct sun, but heat and light. The second thing is they require very less water. The easiest way to kill a succulent is by giving it too much water or humidity or moisture.
There's a question from Shalini Achar. She asks, when once a year we remove the plant and they completely replant it, adding manure at the time, can the root pruning also be done? If it needs to be done, then what is the correct way of doing that?
Root pruning can be done. Uh, Root pruning is tricky, because an incorrect root pruning, you can kill even a big plant in a day. So we have to understand that root system is directly responsible for absorbing minerals, waters, and everything. So the easiest way to do is only trim off what is the fiber, like the thinnest roots. They definitely can be trimmed off easily. Anything that becomes thicker, that might be, so normally you'll see one tap root, the main root that is coming down. uh, Sometimes that gets divided into 4 5 in a radial manner, so definitely don't cut them. That's my only tip there.
Okay. Shirish Kaluraya asks, what is the ideal time to change mud in the pot?
So you mean in which season, or when should we repot? So, okay, I'll tell you both. So good time to repot your plants is right now, before monsoon or after the first rain. Then again in March, February, March, just after the spring ends, if it's a flowering plant, after the flowering is done. Basically before summer, just preparing the plant well. So these are two good times to repot your plant. How do you know you have to repot the plant? Is the roots begin to come out from top or bottom, or sometimes you might also observe that once you're watering the plant, the water is just running out right away after you pour. And that happens because the roots have become too much in the pot, and because of that there are gaps inside in the pot. So these are two things that would tell you that the plant can be repotted. In general, besides that, there's no reason I feel you need to just take a healthy plant and just change the soil and put it. You can use things like soil amendments, like we have green stick, bloom stick, fertilizer. You can add that to the plant to aid and help with the growth.
Okay, so I'll go for the last question,
Yeah.
and that is repotting, cutting, trimming roots. How essential is all of that?
Repotting, cutting, trimming roots. Okay. Repotting is essential if you want your plant to go bigger. After a certain point, if the roots are not growing, the plant is not going to grow. So, say if you have a small pot, there's a limited size to which the plant can grow in that. So, in that sense, repotting to one size higher pot becomes essential if you want to have a bigger plant. Cutting and trimming of roots per se is not very essential. The cutting and trimming of roots become essential when you want to keep a plant in the same pot. You don't want to change the pot. And this is the way bonsais are made. So how bonsais are made is you do extensive proper cutting and trimming of roots so that the plant can continue to be in a small pot even as it ages. So yeah.
So thank you so much, Vinayak. This session has been so useful. It's been informative, and it was a brilliant session. We have learned a lot of tips that we can implement at home today. And you mentioned green stick and bloom sticks. And to be honest, we bought that, and I have it right here. And it has been
Thank you.
so useful. I mean, I started planting lemon seeds. We bought the seed. We didn't buy the seeds, so we cut lemon, and all
Yeah.
the remaining seeds we planted it, and the growth was very slow, and we were going through YouTube and we found your videos, and it was so useful after that my grandfather and I, we were so excited, and I think the love for gardening began after watching your videos, and we bought these green
Thank you.
sticks. And to be frank, our lemon pot, the plant is growing pretty well after that. So thank you so much again for this wonderful session. We all enjoyed it, and I would like Ananth uncle to take over. Over to you, uncle.
Hi, thank you, Vinayak Garg and Lazy Gardener. We had a wonderful session. I'm sure all our viewers have liked the advice given by you. On behalf of the association, I thank you and Priyanjali for conducting this program and bringing us the knowledge required for the growing plants at home. Thank you all viewers. In the meantime, we have next session, which is a session by Palimar Swamiji on Sunday, 5 p.m. The topic is, sorry, I missed the topic name, but he's going to be speaking on 5th of at 5 p.m. on 5th of July. I request all of you to join us and be present. I'll be sending out the links for the same. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you.